Ms. Pacano, Bonamici, I'm sorry, Bonamici.
Thank you so much to the chair and ranking member. I agree with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that it's important to protect free speech at public and private colleges around the country. Public colleges have a constitutional obligation, as we've heard, to uphold free speech on campus, and public and private colleges have a responsibility to provide each student with a higher education that's intellectually stimulating, challenges their worldview, and exposes them to perspectives different from their own. And to my knowledge, the vast majority of colleges are upholding this obligation and this responsibility. I'm deeply concerned about the academic censorship at all levels, and including in higher education, that's being advanced by several Republican leaders, especially at the state level. Most recently, as our colleagues described, Florida Republicans took steps to prohibit public colleges in the state from mentioning or working on anything related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And Mr. Chair, this is actual censorship, silencing voices you don't agree with, and I urge you and your colleagues to do some much-needed introspection before distracting the American people from the real issues at hand, which is a systematic assault on democratic values and increasing unaffordability of college. I want to note that I agree with Berkeley Law School Dean Chemerinsky, his statement that freedom of speech does not protect a right to shut down others, and I thank you, Mr. Shapiro, for citing Dean Chemerinsky. But I also, although I agree that you absolutely, Mr. Shapiro, have a right to call Deans Traynor and Gherkin, quote, spineless cowards who are unwilling to confront the illiberal inmates who have taken over their institutions, end quote, I find statements like that to be unnecessarily inflammatory and not helpful to finding solutions to the challenges we're discussing today. My question is for Ms. Nossel, and I thank you for your testimony. I'm acutely aware of the fine line between free speech and hate speech or harassment on college campuses, and I appreciate the work you do for free expression for all. Thank you to PEN America. So, Ms. Nossel, where does the line of freedom of expression start and end on a college campus, and are there situations where there should be parameters placed on such expression?
You know, we have well-established First Amendment law that defines things like true threats, harassment that are not protected speech, that can be banned and punished. And so, you know, that should be our lodestar. I don't think we should be passing new legislation that puts new categories of information and expression out of bounds, that we don't have under the First Amendment laws that dictate what can and can't be in the curriculum. You know, to us, that evokes the McCarthy era. You know,
I find that very problematic. Can we talk about private colleges for a minute? Should they consider the distinction between free speech allowed under their respective codes of conduct, because of course it's not a First Amendment issue, and speech that would otherwise be considered prohibited by the First Amendment, threatening violence, for example?
I mean, most private colleges have staunch free speech obligations of their own that they've voluntarily undertaken. So as part of a mission statement or university policy, many of the universities like Stanford that we're talking about have adopted those policies. And I think that's extremely important because, again, they're incubators of democratic citizenship. We want students on those campuses to be exposed to all ideas. And I think that's why it's so important that the leadership of Stanford University did step in and say this was not handled appropriately, and here's what our principles are.
And I absolutely agree with that. I agree it's important for students to be exposed to different and sometimes uncomfortable perspectives in college. And as you mentioned, that's how they get prepared to be in the real world. But do you agree that it's also important for colleges, public and private, to consider the mental and physical health and safety of students, and is it important for them to have policies in place before a controversial speaker or a large protest is expected on campus? So how and if so, how can they strengthen existing policies and better educate faculty and students on the parameters of their free speech rights and on-campus policies?
Yeah, sure. Of course, a university has to ensure physical safety. That's paramount. And there is a lot that they can do to lay the groundwork to protect free speech without impinging upon physical safety. They can have policies that allow people to protest outside, that allow them to protest in ways that don't disrupt. There can be very powerful, potent protests that get the message across without interfering with people's ability to listen to a speaker. And I think pushing those policies, educating students, educating faculty, ensuring this is part of the curriculum, part of a freshman orientation, would instill those values and get people to come to grips with those values.
Are there some institutions, and I don't mean to cut you off, but
No.
the clock is ticking, are there some institutions that are doing that well?
Some are. We're doing free speech institutes at Penn America that are very well received. We're working with universities across the country, but it needs to be much more widespread.
I appreciate that. And as I yield back, Mr. Chairman, I request unanimous consent to enter into the record a statement from the American Psychological Association in support of the right of educators to do their jobs without political interference.
No objections.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you. I'd like now.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Turn on your notifications so every time I put out a video, you can know about it. It'll come up in your feed. Hit that like button if you liked it. And be positive. Peace.